Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today, I'm covering the plays The Thing and Rodeo Daze. I know that what everyone probably expects for me to say next is that these are two very forgettable episodes, right? And maybe they are, but they aren't forgettable to me personally. Like, I remember them both quite well, actually. But I suppose I can entertain the idea that they are forgettable, and above all, they're also episodes that I associate heavily with Season 7. As always, thank you all for watching today. Your support is very appreciated as per usual. Y'all are the ones that make doing these reviews so fun. And with that said, let's just get right into it. I remember that back in the day, the plays The Thing was called one of the most boring SpongeBob SquarePants episodes of all time. After watching and reviewing the other snooze fests that were The Clash of Triton, Porous Pockets, Rise and Shine, and the worst thus far, Hocus Pocus, I'm not entirely convinced that this is the case. Let's see if this blanket statement holds up. The plays The Thing begins interestingly. I mean, I was certainly delighted to see SpongeBob act like the little weirdo he very much is, but this entire scene felt very slow. And yes, I know that this scene is one of those ones featured in those subliminal messaging or adult jokes in SpongeBob videos, which I, to borrow some show terminology, think is a load of barnacles. SpongeBob's just blowing up some balloons, long balloons that literally exist, and they're meant for balloon animal art, which guess what, is exactly what SpongeBob is doing. Get your minds out of the gutter. Anyway, I love how the mailman ended up running out in terror after interacting with SpongeBob's Squidward balloon. That was hilarious. I think one thing that I like about the plays The Thing is that it further establishes Squidward as someone with hobbies and creative aspirations. We already knew this, of course, but I like episodes like this that exhibit the reality of it instead of just talking about it. Like when we get to see him painting, or playing clarinet, or in this case directing and starring in a just about one-man play, it's just fun, and it gives his character more depth, and more details to pull from in future episodes. When Squidward receives the letter, I love how we continue this running joke of Mr. Krabs being perplexed by Squidward's happiness, and SpongeBob having a happy break is so him, I love it. The part where Squidward reads the letter after preemptively quitting, which just shows how arrogant he is pretty entertaining. I love how he just circles back to reclaim his job, and how Mr. Krabs isn't even fazed at this point. He fires and rehires his employees multiple times a week at this rate. SpongeBob's constant riding of the Squidward hype train reminds me a lot of Can You Spare a Dime, which is great for me considering that is my second favorite episode in the entire show. The plays The Thing is also very reminiscent of another episode that I adore, which is Culture Shock. And yes, I'm saying reminiscent. I already know that some people consider this episode to be a ripoff, and I'm nipping that in the bud right now. Y'all already know I don't even like using that term when I can help it, and this is nowhere near the time where that term would be needed in any way, in my opinion. I also love how SpongeBob is clearly learning from Mr. Krabs as he comes up with that marketing genius, that singy eating time. It kind of feels like a continuation from Cracked Crabs in that way, and this name that SpongeBob comes up with, Singy Eaty Time, is hilarious. Like, I'd go to that over dinner theater any day. The part with the anchovies was a nice reference to Help Wanted, but then the joke with Mr. Krabs not paying them kind of landed weirdly because they all reacted way too long after he said that. It almost felt like they were just wasting time here. It was weird, and so the joke wasn't as funny as it could have been because the timing was off. Goes to show how important timing is for comedy and all the little things that go into making a joke land, I suppose. But anyway, the comedy regains its footing once the play gets started, so there's not too much of a lapse here. The part where Harold is eating Nat's arm and Nat just gives him seasoning is a great example of the really funny jokes in this episode. We then arrive to the actual play, and it's fine. Squidward basically just monologues throughout the scene while having continuous interruptions from the customers and Mr. Krabs, which brings to mind Graveyard Shift. Because the play is about Squidward working at the Krusty Krab, it just feels like him dramatizing the work that he's already doing, and so it works well. It's like a dramatic rendition of this show. And there's some pretty funny moments in here, like the way that Squidward gets in that customer's face about his soul, or when he calls Mr. Krabs a skinflint and then has to backtrack a little bit. Unfortunately, SpongeBob's lack of acting chops throughout this section kind of brings down the episode, because it's just awkward and not in a fun way, but this doesn't last for too long because we're back to the dramatic monologuing by Squidward together with SpongeBob's randomness. But then of course SpongeBob ends up being the better quote-unquote actor once he realizes that he burnt the Krabby Patties, bringing in that melodrama that I love. Things take a turn for Squidward as his arrogance bites him in the ass, or perhaps hits him in the face. And I am again reminded of culture shock as Mr. Krabs takes advantage of the customer's anger towards Squidward, providing them with items to throw, for a fee of course. At least SpongeBob tries to save Squidward, using one of my favorite kinds of moments where SpongeBob says something profound and the town ends up being like, yeah, screw that. Though this time there is a little bit of a twist as Patrick shows up out of nowhere to start the food fight. Poor SpongeBob gets involved too, like he did not deserve that patty to the face. I also love how Plankton somehow ends up being thrown, like that was a fun little Easter egg. I really enjoyed that. And this episode ends quite well too, with SpongeBob and Squidward laughing rather dementedly when Mr. Krabs says that there's going to be more plays in the future. I think that food fight might have done some mental damage, but with a boss like Mr. Krabs, no way those two have the health insurance necessary to get an MRI. Yeah, so as you can see, I clearly do not agree with the masses because I don't see The Place the Thing as a boring episode at all. It is absolutely a hidden gem of this season. I really cannot see where the boring allegations came from because I really had a good time here. The only real issue I had with this episode was that weirdly landing joke with the anchovies, but everything else was pretty good, and certainly not dull or boring. So overall, this episode is a good fit for my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9 out of 10. Holy shit, guys, do my eyes deceive me? Are we really about to be talking about an episode focused on Sandy in season 7? And I actually like it? It's been so long. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy is so far on my shit list that I don't even count it as a Sandy episode, so in just about every way, this has been long overdue. This episode also features the above ground, which is something that this show hasn't done since Pressure, or since the first movie, if you want to count that. So now I'm definitely excited. But I do wonder why no one ever talks about this episode, ever. I mean, a quick perusal of the forum's discussion page for this episode reveals that people don't like this episode, or at least find it lacking, which is a shame because that's not how I feel at all. Things get off to a pretty good start since Rodeo Daze not only has a cool title card, but great music as well. And this beginning with the French narrator is pretty fun as well. I love to see him, and I love how he got scared by SpongeBob, though I must admit the staring contest is a rather boring way to start things off. What happened to immediately reeling viewers in? I mean, I guess this episode hooked me with the title card, so maybe I shouldn't say anything. Anyway, things pick up a bit when SpongeBob and Patrick head over to Sandy's place. I loved the gag with the How to Open Things book, and I loved SpongeBob's addition to the gag when he says that he saw the movie but never read the book. God, could you imagine if self-help books had movies out there, or out here in the real world? No thank you. But that idea makes for a good gag in this episode at least. Oh, also I think the bit with the jar was a reference to Big Pink Loser, and I will not be convinced otherwise. I love how Rodeo Daze gives us more information about Sandy, such as how she has a twin brother named Randy, apparently, or that she has a championship title for rodeos. I feel like this particular facet of Sandy, her southern cowgirl type part, is simultaneously the most and least developed and explored part of her. Most because it comes out with every word that she says and is one of the most known things about her, but least because outside of Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm, we never actually see Sandy put these kind of skills to use. We definitely see it much less often than we do her karate prowess or her scientific knowledge. Speaking of Sandy's southern heritage, this episode reminds me a lot of Texas, all the way down to Sandy getting a musical number, and I absolutely love it. I also really love the song in this episode. It's so good and super catchy, and also I'm reminded of an episode of The Backyardigans watching this episode. Yeah, I know, weird connection, but just listen for a sec. Le Master of Disguise was like my favorite episode as a kid, so I can remember it pretty well, and there was a cowboy in that episode. See, it's all connected. Trust the process. Anyway, I love how SpongeBob is overly concerned about Sandy in this rodeo just because of the clown part. Like, that was pretty funny. And the whole sequence of Sandy launching to Texas is visually interesting, which is a plus for me. SpongeBob trying to recruit people to aid him in helping Sandy is also entertaining. Mr. Krabs and Squidward are hilarious. The part where Squidward just walks out of the back of his house is so fucking funny. I love that this episode includes so many different characters too, like a lot. This makes Sandy feel a part of the gang, something that has been sorely lacking as of late. And I love that Plankton was included as someone who could help SpongeBob. Like, that's the exact kind of dynamic I love between these two, and his part is super funny. Rodeo Daze continues on its great and entertaining streak when SpongeBob refuses to take no for an answer and literally kidnaps everyone so that they can save Sandy. Once we get to this part of the episode, I start to think about how this episode can act as a bit of a companion to pre-hibernation week, being almost its inverse, and I love it for that. It's about time that SpongeBob showed some reciprocity for Sandy's actions in that episode. I'm joking, but I think my point is still valid. The way that everyone starts screaming for no reason when they see that they're closing in on Texas is so me-core. You'll never see me buying into that state's propaganda. Never, I say. Anyway, from here, Rodeo Daze has some great stylistic choices in those live-action cutouts of Sandy and the bullfrog, as well as everyone else once the bubble gets popped by said frog. It makes the episode unique and visually interesting, carrying over some cues from episodes like Texas and Pressure. And while the ending of this episode is rather abrupt, I like it as it is, with a fun little pun closing us out, and the episode ending with everyone being on dry land. Rodeo Daze is just a really fun and enjoyable episode, with some really great humor to boot. And it's Sandy focused, although maybe focused is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, since this episode doesn't quite feature her as much as I'd want, but you know what, that's okay. I really have nothing bad to say about this episode at all. It's definitely a hidden gem, and people should talk about it more, because it's really good. Like, I really don't know why people dislike this episode, but maybe I'm just that one really positive SpongeBob reviewer. Anyway, all of this is why this episode is going in my amazing tier with a score of 9.4 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Well, I definitely don't have nearly as many as last time. In fact, I hardly have anything at all. I really like when this show does the whole Western thing, the whole cowboy thing. I just think that aesthetic fits this show in such a weird yet great way. Now, it works because it isn't done too often, but like I wouldn't mind it being done a little more. Maybe there's a reason why I loved the Cowboy Jellyfish Fields level of the Cosmic Shake. Speaking of that game, I think it was done supremely dirty. Everyone was hyped for it, and then it fell off immediately. What the hell was that about? Yeah, the final boss fight was lackluster, but the rest was great, come on! As for the plays the thing, yeah, my head is empty. I don't know what else to say. I just thought it was fun. Not much else I can really say there. Melodrama is a great way for me to get invested in an episode and its comedy. But if you've watched this channel enough, you probably know that by now. I really and truly think that that is all I've got for y'all today. So I'm gonna go ahead and close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.